Hey, what's up guys? Today I'll show you a science fiction thriller film, Archive. Spoiler ahead, watch out and take care. The movie begins with a scientist jogging through a wintry forest. While jogging, he tests his AI prototype, if it can detect him moving through the woods. He quickly arrives back at the empty base, which he is assigned to restart for a Japanese tech company. He is welcomed by the first and second prototypes he had designed. These prototypes are his attempts to create a human equivalent AI. Although these prototypes are smart, they don't quite capture the quirks and tics of human beings just yet. The second prototype tells him that it had a dream last night of them driving in a car together. The scientist goes to a separate room, where a memory box is showing a reflection of his wife's consciousness, based on archived memories of her. He talks to his wife on screen, and she is distraught and crying. She tells him she can't do this anymore, and she ends the call. He then flashes back to a memory of him and his wife driving around. In this memory, his wife chided him for choosing to drive manually, instead of letting the self-driving car take over. The scientist answered that he doesn't trust machines that he didn't build himself. Later, the scientist has a video conference call with his boss, who is demanding concrete results from his research project. He has not been very forthcoming with how he is spending his hours and resources, and he is deliberately keeping his boss in the dark about his attempts to create a human equivalent AI. He makes his boss think that the first prototype he made is a crude one, and so she is thinking that he isn't worth commissioning for the company anymore. She even subtly threatens to scrap his project and cut his funding. Additionally, the boss also informs him to do a security systems update because the company's enemies have recently been targeting their bases. However, the scientist isn't overly concerned because the base he is in is so remote. After his call ends, he visits another room where his latest project is slowly coming together. This is his third prototype, and unlike its clunky predecessors, it is shaped like a human. There are several computer screens around the room, showing that his memories of his wife are being transferred to the prototype. The first prototype he made only has the mental capabilities of a toddler, while the second one has the capabilities of a teenager. He's been improving on his previous work, and he hopes that the third one will finally have advanced mental capabilities. The scientist later goes out with the second prototype to fix a module outside the base. The second prototype is sulky, asking him why he isn't spending as much time with it as he did before. It also asks him about the project he's working on, but the scientist gets defensive and orders the prototype to go back to the base. The third prototype awakens with a scream, and the scientist tries to calm it down by saying that he is just putting it in hibernation for a while. Afterward, the scientist discovers that the doors have opened and a wolf has stepped inside. He chases it away and orders the base's system to close the doors, but it doesn't follow his orders. The second prototype informs him that it has detected an error in the vehicle storage area. He goes outside with the prototype to fix the error. While opening the control box, he mentions to the prototype that he will do an inspection of its legs soon, since he'll use them for the legs of the third prototype he's currently building. The prototype isn't happy about this. The scientist then sees that the components inside the control box have been changed, and he blames the second prototype for this. Back inside, he gets a notification that 2 vehicles are requesting entry to the base. He quickly orders the 2 prototypes to hide and power down, since he is hiding how advanced their consciousness is. The visitors are 2 employees who have come to check the memory box that is used by the scientist to communicate with his dead wife. Apparently, this company provides clients with services in storing the deceased memories and allowing their loved ones to talk to them. However, these memories only have a lifespan of a few years. The scientist's wife's memory box is nearing its end, which is why their calls have been short recently. One employee discovers that the box's seals have been tampered with and informs the scientist that they have the right to take the box away. The scientist gets angry and asserts that the base is corporate sovereign territory, and taking the box away will be construed as an armed attack. So the employees back away and leave. The scientist checks on the third prototype again. It's now awake and in a state of shock. He explains that its consciousness is not fully complete yet, which is why it's still getting used to its body. However, it seems to be retaining the wife's memories well. The next day, he tries to administer an empathy test to the third prototype, but the second prototype gives him the wrong component. The third prototype reveals that it's been dreaming a lot. It also appears to be very advanced in its skills. The scientist then introduces the first prototype to it, and he explains that the third one is by far the most excellent attempt at creating AI. The second prototype watches all this on security cameras in the other rooms. Later, the scientist leaves to fix the module again, but without the second prototype this time. It doesn't receive the news well and is saddened that the scientist is spending less and less time with it. The third prototype calls and informs him that the power back on base has been flickering on and off. Something has been tampering with the power supply. Before he returns, the scientist gets a glimpse of a drone through his binoculars. That night, the scientist meets with a risk assessor sent by his company to help with the security systems update. The risk assessor shows him a Polaroid picture of the scientist sleeping and tells him that it was sent to him 2 nights ago by an anonymous sender. The assessor gives him a massive briefcase containing the new security procedures, then he leaves. Another past memory with his wife plays. They were driving, and he told her that he was awarded a 3-year research contract in Japan. His wife was initially happy, but was shocked that they'd need to move abroad for his job. Suddenly, another car flew into their vehicle. The scientist is awoken from his sleep by an intruder alert. One of the glass doors in his living space is broken. He retrieves the case given to him by the assessor and discovers that there's a gun inside. The doors are also closed, and the assessor appears to him on screen. The man asks him if there is an emergency, but the scientist lies and says no. The assessor tells him that the next time he opens the case, the company will respond with appropriate security measures. The next morning, the scientist goes out into the woods again. He remembers another memory with his wife. He was trying to convince her to register her memories for archiving, but she was hesitant. It becomes a sensitive topic for the couple because she is adamant that she doesn't want her consciousness trapped inside a box. She urges him to cancel the subscription, and he promises he will. The scientist launches a surveillance drone in the woods to try to catch the intruder at his house. However, he doesn't find anything except a small keychain of his prototype. He goes back to the base and sees that the first prototype is outside. He ushers it back inside, and the second prototype nervously tells him that the first one doesn't want to come back. The second prototype apologizes for not being enough, and he comforts it. He tells the prototype that he'll need to go outside later that night, and if anyone tries to come inside, it should call him on the radio. The scientist then finds the third prototype hidden inside a hatch. It powers up and is immediately angry at him because it has discovered that his wife's memories are stored in the box. The scientist apologizes and explains that he couldn't bear to be without her. He also shares that after a year of trying, he was able to extract a signal from the memory box that he used as the personality template for the 3 prototypes. The third prototype says that it feels like his wife is his sister. It also reveals that the second prototype had dragged it to the memory box, which is why it found out about his wife's memories. Because of that, the scientist confronts the second prototype, and it confesses that it was an accident. To reprimand it, he locks the second prototype. His boss calls him again and tells him that the employees who inspected the memory box have noticed that his prototypes seem to be based on the memory box technology. This could be grounds for a patent infringement suit, and the memory box company is now suing them. She also berates him for breaking his confidentiality agreement with the Japanese company employing him because he let the memory box company employees inside the base. He could be terminated for this. However, the scientist remains undaunted. He is focused on completing the third prototype and begins to work on creating a more humanoid body that resembles his wife. Soon later, he accomplishes this, and the third prototype wakes up to its newly assembled body. Later on, he powers up the second prototype, who is shocked to see that its legs were replaced. It accuses him of giving its legs to the third prototype. He promises that he'll build her new legs soon, but the second prototype is still dejected. It becomes consumed by jealousy and insecurity. It feels like it's being replaced by the third prototype, and it is losing the scientist as a father figure. It attempts suicide by draining its own batteries. Meanwhile, the third prototype is advancing immensely. The wife's memories are now fully integrated with its systems. The first prototype sees the second prototype's collapsed body and calls the scientist. He recharges the prototype again and calls it dramatic. Slowly, the third prototype begins to exhibit more of the wife's personality. It's singing and dancing and even jogging with the scientist. Out of jealousy, the second prototype falls into despair and decides to commit suicide by drowning itself in a lake. The scientist takes its death badly and regrets not showing the prototype more affection. One night, the third prototype slips into the scientist's bed and tries to kiss him, just like it has seen in his wife's memories. However, the scientist is appalled and orders it out of the room. The prototype becomes overwhelmed by the memories and it collapses. When it wakes up, it informs the scientist that his wife was pregnant when she died. The scientist then tries to call his wife again via the memory box, but he isn't able to connect. He contacts a customer service representative instead, who informs the scientist that since the memory box's time is running out, there is nothing they can do to fix the quality of the calls. The representative also encourages him to prepare for the final call with his wife. Finally, the scientist tells the representative about the two employees who paid him a visit previously. The representative is confused and answers that they have no employees by those names, nor did the company send anyone to inspect his memory box. The call eventually gets disconnected. He then answers another call, this time from his angry boss, who informs him that the memory box company retrieved the remains of the second prototype from the lake and now have evidence in the lawsuit against him. The scientist's project is now terminated, effective immediately. The third prototype hears all this and breaks the screen with a crowbar. The scientist knows that his former employer will be sending a team to dismantle his project, and so he gets to work on securing the base's defenses. While he's out, the third prototype goes to the memory box and calls his wife. It tells her that she no longer needs to worry about the scientist because it will take care of him. The scientist catches the prototype doing this and grabs the phone from it. He tells his wife on the phone that he will see her very soon. In his words, the third prototype realizes that he plans on implanting his wife's subconscious into it, effectively erasing its own subconscious from existence. The scientist admits that it is correct and asserts that it's the only way to really have his wife back. Vehicles from the Japanese company begin to arrive. The third prototype grabs the gun from the case and points it at the scientist. It is furious because the scientist isn't able to let go of his dead wife. He tries to explain that he just wants to have a future with his wife. Eventually, the prototype accepts its fate and quietly lets the scientist erase its subconscious. The retrieval team begins to drill the doors open. The prototype loses consciousness. The doors open, but the scientist is mystified to see that there is no one on the other side. The prototype awakens, and it now has the wife's subconscious in it. The scientist rejoices at his success. The phone in the memory box rings, and the third prototype pleads with him not to answer it. But he still picks up the phone. His wife is on the other end of the line, and she tells him that this will be their final call because his memory box is expiring. It turns out that it was him who actually died in the car crash, not his wife. Before he died, he subscribed to a memory box, and so his memories were preserved. Everything about his project and the prototypes never happened. It is all just a creation of his subconscious as the memory box starts to fail. This is why when he had a call with his wife earlier, she is the one emotional, because the continuous visits of her preserved husband are overwhelming her. Still talking, his wife tells him she loves him and bids him goodbye. Lastly, she hands the phone to their young daughter who tells him goodbye too. Tears run down his face as the scientist comprehends the revelation that he is merely the memories of a dead man. The movie ends with the wife hanging up the phone and walking away with her daughter, leaving the archive behind. This is Daniel CC Movie Channel. Stay safe and enjoy your day.